teacher, Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad,
Praise you,
and
Allah.
the legacy that he is leading, that he's been continuously supporting, putting out there, showing and reminding everyone of his great teachers, the Dr. Moses Powell, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and of course his love for all of ours. You know, we just couldn't be where we are if it wasn't for Master Card Muhammad. So with his love and dedication to not just the art but the nation, because of these great people, you know, we wanted to get your take on your experiences with the Grandmaster. So I just have a few questions that I'd like to ask. Particularly, let me start with you, Captain Dwayne.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
You
ma'am.
look so sharp.
Man, praise be to Allah.
But you're one of his oldest black belts here in Chicago.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, I know that we go back a long time.
Yes, ma'am.
And I wanted to really get your take on what it's like working with him, what it was like working with him when he was, you know, I think when he came here, he was just professor.
He was professor.
He was just professor.
Professor, yes, ma'am.
And then he was the first officer.
Yes, ma'am.
Then he became the regional captain,
Captain.
and now the assistant supreme.
Yes, ma'am.
So can you just give me a little take on your experiences working with him?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mama Judy, for, you know, thinking of me when you asked for this interview and getting a variety of responses about, you know, our teacher. You know, I'm humbled. I remember coming into the mosque at age 20, 23, 24, and my first FOI class, I met the Grandmaster, who was professor then, and I started a martial arts class that day. He used to hold classes right after FOI class. So I started that day and I never looked back. Moving forward, and we moved into several locations, raising up dojos and building them ourselves. There was a unique quality about Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad that, you know, a lot of the martial artists probably don't think of, but you know, I was able to experience, and it was his patience and willingness to help married couples. And he did that in the midst of martial arts classes and after martial arts classes. So he would have some of the black belts teach the class while he tended to families. And some of those meetings would go until 1 and 2 in the morning, and I would sit there and look and watch. And you were part of some of those meetings, Sister Judy. But he told me once, he said, you know, I'm teaching you martial arts, but it goes way beyond the kicking and punching and striking and blocking. He said, if you take this and look at it as an avenue to help you with your marriage, he said, you know, when something comes at you, I'm teaching you how to sidestep it. I'm teaching you how to push when they pull and pull when they push, and causing an off balance. And he went on to talk about, you know, marriage and the conflict of wife and husband. And I started looking at it, I look at it right today, navigating through marriage and social conflict with brothers and sisters. And that's one of the, you know, that attribute of what it is that he's given, you know, if properly looked at. That attribute, that part of our martial arts, our jiu-jitsu, what he's given is one of the things that we should relish as an honor. You know, something that he's given us, because we can go in the dojo and learn how to kick and fight and do whatever, but, you know, what about marriages? You know, what about, you know, maintaining brotherhood and sisterhood? And that's what, you know, I've looked at Grandmaster and what he's given us, and I was part of those meetings with marriage, my wife and I, those counseling sessions, several, numerous. And that, looking at the jiu-jitsu that way, you know, that's something that I think about a lot, because the conflicts constantly happen, but Grandmaster's been so willing to give that aspect of himself, far beyond the martial arts, you know, helping families with their marriages, with their children. So that I remember mostly, and the training, of course. You know, the number of hours that we put in, and the beat downs he gave us. So praise be to Allah. Yes, ma'am.
And y'all just seem to love those beatdowns. A good Inky is somebody who just loves it. They want it,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
They
Yes,
go
ma'am.
after it.
Yes, ma'am.
Man, that's why I have not yet been able to be a Inky. But, you know, you just answered a question that I was going to pose later, too, about a few of the lessons learned from him in the dojo, but impacts your everyday experience, spiritually, physically, morally.
Yes,
Could
ma'am.
you speak to that, too, Brother
Yeah,
Celeritas?
well, thank you also for inviting me, even thinking about me in such a what I call a gift, and I concur because the very thought that came to my mind was just that, because I can recall early in my marriage where there was a disagreement between me and my wife. And next thing you know, I got a call from GM, and he asked, very unassuming, you haven't been to the house in a while. He says, I want you tonight to come over with your wife. So we go over, and everything was, you was in the kitchen cooking, and he's in the front room. And I should have known something because the Quran and the Bible was on the table, but I just assumed that it was just usually there. So we engaged in watching whatever we got finished watching, and next thing you know, the TV goes off. He leans over to me and says, so what's going on? So little did I know that she had already put in a phone call to you, and you called GM, which he called me. So I could bear witness to that. And I remember being very, very new in the dojo, witnessing a lot of the things that Sensei Captain Dwayne is talking about in terms of the meetings and everything. So I can completely concur with all of that.
That's awesome. I do remember that very well. We had pad thai for dinner.
We
didn't
did.
Yes, indeed. And we were always at your house.
Yes, ma'am.
Not really for counseling all the time, but we were just,
Yes,
because,
ma'am.
you know, Dojo's a family.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the biggest thing that he's always wanted to make sure that we maintain a spirit of family, a spirit of love. So people, they loved to train. They loved to be there. And I guess that worked in his favor because he never wanted to leave the dojo most
That's
of the
right.
time.
That's right.
Yeah, those late nights.
That's right. Yeah.
I was looking
I
for
had to
home
cut the
at
lights
night.
out, remember? I had to cut the lights out. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, but we definitely did enjoy those times and got a lot from it. Now, I want to just talk a little bit, or ask you a question about, what he's been doing over the last 20-some odd years with this National Training Conference.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, before I go there, let me just ask you, have you ever trained in the martial arts before you started training with GM?
No. I used to do what we call street boxing. So I knew how to, what I thought knew how to do some boxing at that point. So, but martial arts is something that I always wanted to get involved in. I grew up watching Samurai Sunday, so I always enjoyed martial arts in that aspect. So, but the funny story is I never liked to see black or white people doing martial arts. So if you wasn't Chinese or Japanese, it just didn't look necessarily real to me. So when I saw GM and he had that flow, that same flow, then that drew me into it, into the VSK Jiu-Jitsu. So that question was no.
I remember you telling me something, your first encounter with him, or your first sight of him.
Oh,
and-
yes,
Can you
yes. I never forget it. Once again, I had a little bit of knowledge of fighting, won some nice fights on the street, so I thought I knew. The dojo was at the warehouse on 79th Street. So I'm in there, and well, let's backtrack a little bit. So we had an FOI class, and we were told to everybody to wear their sweatsuits. So we get in there. They said, "Professor or is going to come teach." So I'm like, okay. So we're working out. I think Dwayne or Abdul was doing the workout, and he comes in, and I'm looking like, okay, okay. So this is the true story. So he gets up, he does the technique on Brother Dwayne, Captain Dwayne, and Abdul, and my very thought was, they're letting him do that. They just throwing him. They just going with it. So when it was time for the each one teach one aspect, I never got up. I remember just sitting there, just watching, just being very observant. So anyway, I get into the dojo. I'm there maybe my second class. GM does this technique, and once again, I'm thinking everybody is just going with it. So he's talking, and I don't know if he sensed it or whatever, but he asked me to come up. So it was a choke. I choked him, and everyone, and he was doing what we call at that time the heaven and hell the movement, one arm up, one arm down. So, but I thought people was just letting him do it. So I stiffened up a little bit, just to being the Negro that I was at that time. And I remember him hitting me so hard in the ribs, my hands flew up, and he moved my arm out of the way, and next thing you know, he just swept me. Now, mind you, I didn't got to the falls class. And I remember I bust my lip, and he didn't know it because it was in the inside. But when I got back up, I popped back up. I tasted a little bit, and
Made a believer.
I was sold at that point. This is the real deal right here. So unfortunately, in training, I find that we have to almost do some similar things when you're dealing with men. You know what I'm saying? You have to almost break a brother down because of the mindset that we have in order to build them back up to. So that's something that GM did personally for me.
Now, Captain Dwayne, you had quite a bit of opportunity to train with him while the doc was still
Yes,
here.
ma'am. Yes,
And
ma'am.
us bringing in the doc for seminars. And
Yes, ma'am.
whatnot. So the GM has been very, very studious and very concerned about continuing his legacy. So give me some kind of your take or your view on the comparisons between what GM is offering to us today in relation to what the doc has given him and what you've seen the doc do.
Right. Well, in a meeting with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he asked about my son once. And I said, well, Brother Minister, he's doing good. He said, does he know that martial arts? I said, Brother Minister, he's better than I am, or was at that age. He said, brother, that's progress. He said, your child should always, or those who come after you, should always be better than you. And when I look at Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad, and not to use the word better, but he's a compliment, a progressive compliment to what the doc gave him. He wasn't complacent, and look at what he did. He took his 3 teachers and meshed their arts and made one art, giving showing honor to all three teachers. Well, the doc's teacher, the doc, and then Soke Lil John Davis. So when I met Dr. Moses Powell, everybody was frantic to meet him because Grandmaster lifted his name so much, and that's rare. I've been around a lot of martial artists, and they may mention their teacher sometimes, but Grandmaster lift the name of Dr. Moses Powell at every class. In fact, our salutation, when we close out our class, Dr. Moses Powell's name is mentioned. Soke Lil John's name is, Davis's name is mentioned. Grand Professor V's name is mentioned. But when you see Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad, I've never heard him at odds with Dr. Moses Powell, at odds with Soke. And Soke, we talk to him now, today. He'll call us at 4 or 5 in the morning. But, and I've never, Grandmaster has been a great compliment and really aspiring to be what it is that the system or the art dictates. So when I met Dr. Moses Powell, my family, my son was, I think he was just born. And Doc would always come over and talk to my wife and my son, and he showed that kind of love that that Grandmaster showed, that type of concern and that type of commitment to family. He showed that. And I began to see where Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad was pulling his inspiration or his spirit from. But for a man to love another man like that and then want to live in the perfection of what it is that he taught. See, that's what you see in Grandmaster. So the technique is resemblant. It resembles what Dr. Moses Powell does, and then it has an oomph to it. It has a little more something to it. And he's not upstaging his teacher. He's showing a progression, and he's doing a service to what it is that his teacher has. And you can see him constantly working that in his mind and in his technique. You see Doc in his technique, and then you see his personality come up out of the technique, giving respect to and giving more understanding to Dr. Moses Powell.
That's a great observation. But even greater than that is your expression of it, your
Yes, ma'am.
ability to put it in words. Because I do remember the GM always saying that Doc would give you something, and he's looking for you to make
Yes,
it
ma'am.
your own.
Yes, ma'am.
And that, that's really beautiful, because you see, we always do want our children to be better than us.
That's right. That's right.
And I think that spirit, as well as the spirit and love and humility that he's learned and observed from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is intact.
That's right. That's right.
So in him, because everyone will talk about his humility.
Yes, ma'am.
That's like the first thing that they'll talk about, and I appreciate that. That was absolutely
Praise be to Allah. Yes,
Did
ma'am.
you want to speak on that?
No, I mean, once again, I completely concur. I remember the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in a lecture, he talked about how everybody that stayed connected to the messenger was always in the front of the line. He says when they lost the connection, they moved to the back of the line. So I look at Jim in that same sense, because he's always kept his teachers, all of them, up front. And I personally believe that my development in the nation is because of GM. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I believe, knows my name because of GM. Right. And a lot of things that I have participated in, I believe it was a direct connection because of I knew GM and what GM has given us. And what we've used and what we've, and I use what he's given us on security, in dealing with my family and dealing with my children and I just believe that connection, that those people who stay connected to the messenger is the same connection that GM has in connection to his instructors, and I believe that that's something that we have, the little bit that we have,
yes,
because we're connected to GM. So I completely agree with that.
Yes, ma'am.
So how long have you been on this journey?
I've been training with GM now since 2002. So it'll be 16 years.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It'll be 16 years.
20 years. I came in '96, trained at the first FOI class, never turned back, and it's been 22 years. 22 years in March. Yes, ma'am.
That's awesome. Now, let me just think now, as a national trainer over the past 20 years, he's been doing this national conference. Well, it actually started out as a seminar. It was just the brothers in the beginning. Then we tried to get the sisters involved, and
Yes,
we got
ma'am.
a few sisters. And, as time has, gone by, we are no longer a seminar,
huge.
workshops,
Yeah.
we're a conference.
Conference.
International
An
conference.
international conference.
right.
And you take Celeritas a really big part in that as one of the trainers in some of the workshops. Can you just speak on, well, let me just say this. through all of these years, okay, the conference has now extended to the training of our youth. And leaders and organizers and outside of the nation, but in our communities.
Right.
So he's reaching out now. Tell me, why do you think that's happening, and why would you think that is absolutely necessary?
Well, I think that is very good and it's very important, because if you turn on your TV and look at any part of the news, nobody is exempt. There's violence that's going into every aspect of religion, every aspect of anything. You can no longer say that you are not going to do anything to defend yourself. You know, I tell people all the time when I am blessed to go out and teach, is that, you know, a lot of people lock their doors, their car doors, when they go into a facility. They put their alarm on when they go into a facility. They lock their house. They do all this type of stuff, but there is no security. You know, we talk about God and how Jesus and everybody is going to bless us, but you don't have that same faith when it comes to your valuables, your materialistic valuables. But when it comes to your life, you want to put all that you have into something that is real, but it's real when you have something to give in terms of that. You cannot ask for something to come out of you that you hadn't necessarily put inside of you. So the beauty of what GM is doing right now is he's extending himself to the churches, extending himself to a lot of the other organizations, because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan actually commissioned him to do so.
That's right.
He commissioned him to go to the different mosques and the different churches and get everybody else involved. Because as black people, our lives are on the line, you know, and nobody is exempting today in this day and time. So our proof now is turning on the TV. We can sit back and we can talk about something and people can say I'm good, you know, but right now, no one is good. No one is exempt. The violence is everywhere. If you live in a black community, violence is everywhere, and we have to arm ourselves with the whole armor of God, first of all, but you also got to put yourself on something physical. You got to be able to defend yourself physical. And to me, it's just a breach of security, and it's just a lack of disrespected of the greatest gift that God has ever given you, which is your life.
That's right. That's right.
Now, Captain Dwayne, you train a lot of other people too,
Yes, ma'am.
outside of the nation. And what are some of the reasons why they come to you for training?
You know, we can go back and talk about the spirit of Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad and the reason for this success. He didn't change the teachings, you know. People come to me because I have moments when I'm teaching that I put myself in Grandmaster's valence. I teach, and it's attractive, and any man that tells you that when he's imparting that knowledge or that wisdom or of a martial arts to someone, women find you attractive. But I watched Grandmaster and how he handled women in the martial arts class, and he has given us personal advice on how to teach women. He said the attractions are going to happen. He said, but this is how you teach them and train them out of the attraction and let them know that this is business. He said, when you instruct them and you touch them, he said, you let them know that this is not a love tap. You know, you let them know. You move the leg. I'm serious. He showed me. He kicked my leg over one day, and he said, you move the leg over and you rub and you let them know. You know, I'm not attracted to you. I want to be a service to you. And that's why a lot of people, and Brother Celeritas can bear me witness, you know, we have a level of success, especially with women, because we are serious about the business and trying to reflect our teacher who reflected Dr. Moses Powell. And like I said, Brother Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad, to me, is a progression of the spirituality of the system.
Wow, you know, I never expected you to go there in answering that question.
Yes, ma'am.
That's awesome, because
Praise the Lord.
I thought you was going to talk about the, you know, this is what's going on in the world today and how, you know, you know, some of the people out there really feel and believe that we in the Nation of Islam, we got our stuff together, and
Yes,
if they
ma'am.
want to learn something, they need to come to us to learn it, which is absolutely beautiful, because that just shows that not only are most of us doing what we should be doing, but they see the minister.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
So they expect
Yes,
us
ma'am.
to be like
Like
the
that.
minister.
That's right.
So I definitely concur with that,
Yes,
because of course, you know, then GM and I, we would be married 25 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've seen a lot in the dojos from New York to
That's
here.
right, sister.
You know,
Sister Judy.
and I tell you, I'm just flabbergasted at your
Oh, praise be to
response,
Allah.
because I do witness that.
Yeah.
I do witness that, and it is absolutely, man.
Well,
For me, it's heaven.
We've had years with him, you know, and he could see, you know, he could see. And I remember one day, you know, I was teaching a class for him, and a number of women came, and there were no brothers. He said, man, cancel that class and lock the doors. He said, cancel the class and lock the doors, because he knew where I was. He knew who was in the class, and he could see. That's, you know, I'll just say that. He could see. And he said, and I understood. And then we had conversations behind it. And I mean, martial arts to me today, and when I teach, I talk about family. I talk about purpose. I talk about the mission of learning, the reason for learning. And we can't help but resolve to spirituality. It always comes back up. It always, you know, you're not going to be successful if you're mishandling the women in your class, if you're mishandling the children, if you're mishandling the people in your class. And we've seen both sides of it. And Grandmaster has given us the side that, I mean, it's the best road to take.